Mike, check 1 2 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and there's no doubt that GameStop has caught up to market prices, and for most of their games, they're pretty much at market price with what they've got their games at. But the thing of it is that there are still certain things that you can get from GameStop that, in my opinion, are still a bit underpriced, and I'm just kind of gonna go through some of them now, and I'll just really talk about it as a category. To me, GameStop still has probably the best deal for controllers on retro consoles. And I'm talking about like Gen 6, Gen 5, Gen 4. They're typically underpriced when it comes to controllers, and a lot of times they're going to come with OEM controllers. I picked up this PS1 controller, which these are honestly, for me, these are harder to find, especially finding them like clean. This was one of the cleaner ones that I found, not super yellow. There is some like, you could see some residue on the analog sticks, but I can probably get that cleaned off pretty easily. But for $11, I mean, it's not bad. In my opinion, this is definitely a clean pickup in terms of controllers. And I was actually looking for a second PS1 controller because I have one that's like super clean, but I have one that's really yellowed. So this is actually a really good condition upgrade for me. Also got that OEM Nintendo SNES controller. That was $8. So, I mean, $8 for an original Super Nintendo controller, in my opinion, is not bad at all. I know like sometimes when I go on eBay, I see them range anywhere between like $18 and $30 for like an OEM controller. So to me, $8 is a really good deal. I wasn't mad at that at all. That to me was a good find. And then two Xbox controllers. Now the thing with original Xbox controllers is that a lot of times you'll see the control. Let me just pick this one up. A lot of times you'll see the controller, but it'll be missing this little connector piece here that you need to actually plug I'm not even showing it. Sorry. It'll be missing this connector piece that you see here. That little piece that connects. I'm not sure if you can see that behind the rubber band. There's like a little piece that connects. And what that is that gives you the actual part that you need to plug into the Xbox. So Xbox is one of the only controllers that I have had so far that's actually a controller where you have the controller, but then you need another piece to plug it into the Xbox. I don't know why they did that way. But again, $11 a piece. I know a lot of times these OEM Xbox controllers, they'll go for, 15 to $20. So to me, that's a good deal. That's underpriced. And because I now have an original Xbox, finding good controllers is important to me, especially seeing as how like the only controller that my main controller that I use is like this big behemoth of a controller, which is cool, but it's not the most fun controller to use. These are a little bit more like better in my opinion. These are a bit more comfortable. They kind of resemble more of like where Xbox was going with the 360 controller. So those are a lot more comfortable to use, and I can actually rock with those. Now, when it comes to a lot of the games, honestly, most of GameStop's retro stuff is pretty much at market value. Maybe you're getting 10 to 15% off, but for the most part, unless their system hasn't updated to catch up to whatever the market price is, you're going to pay market price. But you still can run into some really sweet games. Ran into a copy of Mario Party 2 because I had to go out and about today, and I ran into a GameStop that I really don't go into at all. I've only been to this GameStop maybe one other time in like the last 10 years. And this store actually had a ton of retro stuff in there. So I was actually impressed by how much GameCube, complete in box GameCube stuff they had. I was really like shocked for it to be like within my area and have that much complete in box GameCube stuff, to have that much complete in box PS2 stuff, and then have a whole bunch of Sega Genesis stuff. And I'm going to tell you what I feel like all this means in a second. But they had a copy of Mario Party 2, so I picked it up because I have Mario Party 1, and then I have Mario Parties 4 through 7 on the GameCube. I think I have Mario Party 8 on the Wii. I'm thinking I might just complete the cipher and get all of them. But I picked up a copy of Mario Party 2. They also had this, which I was really like super nostalgic. I grew up with the original Game Boy. The original Game Boy was actually my first console ever. It was a handheld, but it was the first console I ever owned as a kid. And I had Mega Man, all the Mega Man games, 1 through 5 on the Game Boy. It's crazy to see how much those games go for now. But they had this one there. I actually paid 38 for that copy of Mega Man. It's like a $60 game that I'm seeing online, between 50 and $60. So I'm sure it ranges. The thing that got me with this one was the condition. This is a very clean, very clean Mega Man 3. Now I'm gonna have to crack this open just to make sure that it is authentic, because you know sometimes they reproduce these games. And I'm not sure if the original Game Boy games, if all of them came with like the little numbers imprinted on there. So I will open this up to make sure that it's authentic. But more than likely it is. I just don't really see people counterfeiting random Game Boy games, but I could be wrong. Who knows? Um, and then they also had a couple of Game Boy Advance games there. They had Mega Man Bass. This one was, I think, a $17 pickup or so. And then they had a Zero Two. This was also like a $22 pickup. Now, they also had a copy of Bomberman for the NES with discounts. This one, I think, came out to like 21 or 21 bucks or so. Um, and the thing is, I'm not keeping this. I'm not actually going to keep this copy of Bomberman. I think I'm going to return this. When buying it, I didn't realize that it had all this stuff at the bottom, so that's a little bit of a turnoff. And then I'm also going to be returning this Mega Man Zero 2, primarily because I already have the Mega Man Zero collection on the DS. And I know there's also a collection on the Switch, but I don't really need this on the Game Boy Advance. I have multiple ways that I could play this game, so this one I will be returning. But the rest are definitely going to be pieces that I add to my collection. And then when it comes to the GameCube games that I added, I picked up a couple cheap GameCube games. Two of these GameCube games were 11 bucks, but they were complete. The first was Resident Evil Zero, which I know isn't a super expensive game or anything like that. This one's one of the more basic ones on the GameCube, but it did have both discs and the manual, which is just hard to find in these like 2 disc games. So this one was one that I added for 11 bucks, super cheap. Then they also had Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. This one I also added as well. Again, complete with the manual, all that jazz. So added that one, but all of these need like a serious wipe down. Like, whew, they all need a wipe down. And then Resident Evil 4, which I have Resident Evil 4 on the Wii, but it was 11 bucks. I grabbed it on the Switch. I don't know why, sorry, on the GameCube. I don't know why it required 2 discs. If anyone knows, you can let me know down in the comments, but went ahead and snagged this one up as well for the GameCube. So all in all, some pretty decent finds, some pretty decent pickups. But in my opinion, if you are one of those few that are still out there picking up hardware, because I know hardware is becoming less and less popular, not for me. I mean, I think now is a great time to pick up hardware. If hardware is getting cheaper, pick it up while it's cheap, because you never know what's going to happen in the future, especially as these things become more and more scarce. And I know a lot of people are fatigued on retro, but everything is cyclical. And if you're someone who collects because you genuinely like to collect, it really shouldn't matter what everyone else is doing. If you like to collect and you're going to continue to collect, now is a good time to look at GameStop for controllers, because a lot of their retro controllers are underpriced. Now, there were a lot of retro games sitting at this GameStop, and according to what the employee said, they were telling me that GameStop had some of the highest, if not the highest volume, like in the region. Yet there were a ton of video games sitting there. I'm talking about Shining Force 2, Gunstar Heroes, Contra Hard Corps, some really sick Sega Genesis games, some solid NES games. They had a vast array of PlayStation 2 games. They had 2 copies of Mario Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. They had a copy of Mario Party 7. There were a ton of quality retro games that I was a little shocked to see that they were actually sitting there on the shelf. But that kind of tells me something, honestly. It does tell me something that the desire is just not there. Either that or just people aren't trying to go to that store, or it's not as busy as they say it is. But they had a lot of retro games at that store, shockingly enough. And to be honest, I was a little shocked that a lot of the good stuff was still sitting. The biggest reason why I could see that a lot of that stuff was sitting though is because the good games like Paper Mario, Thousand Year Door, like the expensive Sega Genesis games, the expensive DS and Game Boy Advance games, a lot of those games were priced according to price charting values, but GameStop does not distinguish disc only from complete in box. So GameStop in certain cases is trying to charge you complete in box copies for games that they're only giving to you with just the cartridge or just the disc. And that I think is where the disconnect is coming in for folks who see these games and maybe they want to pick it up, but they just don't see the value, especially if they can go somewhere else and get the game complete or in a better condition at the same price. But to me, the controllers were well worth it. It never hurts to have extra Xbox controllers. It never hurts to have really any extra controllers for any kind of old school hardware because it breaks down. So that's the mode that I'm in. And especially while it's 8, 10, 11 bucks, mostly everything here was 8, 10, 11 bucks, with the exception of the Mega Man 3 and Mario Party 2. So to me, it just makes sense. I think these were really good value adds, and I'm definitely going to add them into the collection. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Let me know if you're seeing more, a better selection at your local GameStop when it comes to retro, and I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.